So today, let's talk about testing. One thing you should be including in your hypnosis, your conversational hypnosis, your clinical hypnotherapy is testing. An example of this is at the end of the session, you've done all the things that you need to do. And let's say your client's a smoker. This is the best example I can give. I want to make sure that when my client leaves my office, the things they experience in life, the places they go, if smoking is in those places, they have a resource or a robust resource that can handle that issue. What I mean by this is like, if my client's a smoker, okay, and that's the symptom, of course, I've cleaned up the root cause and all the issues and, the processing begins. And I know because they've told me on the strategy call that let's say my client is a smoker and their husband's a smoker as well. I've helped this client in my office or on Zoom or something like that. I know they have to go home to their husband or wife that is a smoker too. I want to introduce, there's a couple of different variants of testing. The one I'll talk about now is called scenario testing. I want to find out, based on the idea in my office, if I tell my client, hey, you're going to go home and your husband's a smoker, how do you think you'll go seeing him smoke? What I'm basically telling the unconscious mind to do is a bit of like future pacing. I'm having the unconscious mind find something that will help this client go back to real life where the real life is going to test them. Just because I'm helping my client quit smoking doesn't mean the husband's going to quit as well. More than likely the wife will go home. The husband will say, I don't really believe in this. I think you're a smoker. Come and have a smoke with me. I have to give my client a resource or a way to deal with that thing. If I don't have them deal with that thing, even though it's just almost like a bit of an imagination technique, they'll have no resource. So a simple question would be, okay, so feeling good now, feeling like you don't ever need to smoke again. What happens when you go home and your husband smokes? How would you deal with that? I'm going to offer that question to my client, and all I need my client to come back with is, well, if he smokes, I'll just go in the other room and go watch TV and keep myself occupied. That's all I need, guys. Now, you want to test a lot. You want to have multiple testing questions for emotional testing, scenario testing as well. But this is just a quick example. So if you know your client has anxiety when driving in on the highway with a lot of cars, you want to test this. You want to ask them, as they're feeling good now, which they should after the session, as the session is complete, how will they go if this symptom shows up again? Because sure, we're dealing with the symptom and the issue there, but I can't predict what's going to happen in their life. I don't want to have my client be like fine china where I just have them shimmy out my office or off Zoom and not test them, because if I don't, the world will test them. What I'm looking for over time as I increase the hardness of the testing, get really, really hard, is I'm essentially, and this is a bit weird to say, I want the session to fail. I want my client to say when they're sitting in front of me, okay, well, if I go home, my husband smokes, yeah, I'll probably have a smoke because that's how we connect. Okay, well, what you've told me right there is that's another knot. That's another root cause, maybe a part of a root cause issue that I have to clean up now. If I don't clean that up in the session now, it's just going to show up later. Then I'm going to get a phone call a couple of hours or a couple of days later saying, Scott, it hasn't worked. We call essentially these mini sessions. Instead of having one drawn out 2-hour session, in an hour, we could get 5 or 6 of these little mini sessions. I've talked about mini sessions before. We talk about it in all our online hypnotherapy programs as well, especially in ACH. But a mini session is important. You do the mini session, you do some testing, you do scenario and emotional testing, and then you're making sure that your client has a resource. Make sure that the aha moment they had or the thing they've had will be strong enough and robust enough to deal with real life. You can't predict what's going to happen to your clients in real life, guys. Help them figure it out now. So when it comes to it, they can recall on that resource later. So let's say, for example, my client fails the testing and says, well, I think I'll smoke there. I just do another mini session. Then I do what I need to do. I go back to testing and I find out, okay, we're here now. What's it like now? Okay, well, if he smokes, I'll go do this instead. However, we normally go camping every 3 years and I think we'll have a cigarette then. Okay, cool. Let's talk about that now. So that's my third mini session. Inside an hour, I might get 10 little mini sessions. But if I don't do these things now, this is one big reason why your client has to keep coming back over and over and over. Why would I do 10 individual sessions and have to go through the whole trance thing and testing thing again? Instead, I'd rather do it on the spot. And this is, again, why the whole scripting thing cannot work, because a script basically says, I'll read from start to finish. I'll send my client home with homework and audios. There's no testing involved. There's no processing. I've talked about processing on other videos. It's better to do mini sessions all in one than 10 individual sessions, because overall, each time you send your client home a failure and say, okay, we've got 6 sessions to do because you bought 6 sessions, You're sending your client home a failure 5 or 6 times. Eventually, they're going to start thinking, well, how long is it going to take before this thing actually works? Why does Scott keep, stopping the session at an hour and I've got to keep coming back? Over time, your client will get frustrated and it's simply they'll just lose interest in the whole thing. Get the mini sessions done, test those things, think about the scenarios, think about even the emotional stuff your client might experience in life after the session, of course. And a lot of these things I should have told you on the strategy call. And you want to test for these things. Future pace your clients towards these things. Get harder and harder and harder and more complex in your testing to make sure they succeed in all the testing. The only time I send a client home is if the testing is complete. They're robust. They've given me reasons or things they would do instead of the old symptom and the old problem. And the reason we need to set this up because there's a lot of processing to still going on, but I need my client to have something in mind to use as a resource or a tool, if you like, that when real life shows up and hits them in the face with what real life is, they've got some sort of resource to rely on. Okay, so testing is super important. If you're not doing testing, guys, and you're sending your client home a failure each time, that's why they keep having to come back, because the sessions are just breaking and you're not there to fix it. It's better to break the session in front of you, fix it then and there, than wait another week to fix it then, because all you're doing, like I said, is sending your client home a failure. Include testing, guys. It goes a long way with the success of your clients.